Hey, cut that pizza into 6 slices, will ya? No way in hell I could eat 8. It's here, the Season 1 soundtrack for Grand Amplitude Throw. Click on the link in the description.
Click on the link in the description for this video to get caught up on Grand Amplitude Throw Season 1 episodes.
Grand Amplitude Throw, Episode 6, Sammy from Miami and the Flame from the Ashes. The morning after the late-night poker game, the sun broke over the frosted fields of the Rivers farm, casting a pale, golden light over the property. Inside the farmhouse, the kitchen was already alive. When Gideon, Colt, Zoo McCoo, Professor Thorne, and Coach Gable McIntyre finally emerged from their makeshift barracks out in the milk house, they were greeted by a wall of intoxicating aromas. Katie Rivers was moving effortlessly around the massive country kitchen. The smell of warm, golden biscuits baking in the oven mingled with the heavy, rich scent of bacon sizzling in a cast-iron skillet and eggs frying on the stove. The strong, dark aroma of fresh-brewed coffee tied it all together, cutting straight through the morning chill. As the men piled into the warm room, Coach Gable found a seat at the massive wooden country table. Almost immediately, the farm's welcoming committee, Cappuccino and the scruffy terrier, Sammy from Miami, gravitated toward him. Gable, the supposedly ruthless wrestling legend, rested his heavy forearms on the table and quietly, methodically began dropping tiny, torn pieces of bacon onto the floor for them. Thorne, holding a steaming mug of coffee, looked down at the terrier. "I have to ask," Thorne said, a rare smile cracking his academic stoicism. "How on earth does a dog end up with a name like Sammy from Miami?" Gideon leaned against the counter, a faint, welcome echo of his old warmth returning to his eyes. "Look at his face, Professor," Gideon rumbled. "He's got that perfectly round circle of black fur around just one eye. It makes him look like a disheveled bandit whose mask is falling off." Gideon took a bite of a biscuit. "He's a criminal dog." The entire kitchen erupted in laughter. Zeus slapped the table. Thorne chuckled into his coffee, and even Gable offered a wide, genuine grin. For a fleeting moment, surrounded by a hearty, delicious breakfast and the unlikely tribe of mentors and friends he had gathered, the agonizing weight of Maya's absence lifted from Gideon's shoulders. After the plates were cleared and the heavy breakfast settled, the house quieted down. Seeking a moment of peace, Katie and Coach Gable stepped out the back door, carrying their freshly refilled coffee mugs into the crisp morning air. They walked side by side through the open field, making their way toward the towering, monolithic wall of green that was the back 40. Away from the noise of the kitchen, the air between them was comfortable, yet heavily charged with that same cautious, middle-aged bolt they had experienced the day before. "I want to thank you, Coach," Katie said softly, wrapping her calloused hands around the warmth of her mug as they walked. "For taking an interest in my boy, for giving him somewhere to go while he's nursing this broken heart." Gable nodded, taking a slow sip of his coffee. He looked up at the towering, unpruned pine trees ahead. "He's a special kid, Katie. I've never seen anything like him." Katie looked down at the frosted earth beneath her boots, a mother's pain flashing in her eyes. "Do you know what happened?" Between him and Maya, Gable paused his steps, lowering his mug, his expression hardening slightly. "I don't know the whole story, but I have my suspicions." He turned to her, leaning in slightly, keeping his voice gentle. "There's a graduate assistant named Baxter Pierce. From what Elias Thorne tells me, Gideon completely upstaged him in the academic world, humiliated him with pure brilliance. Men like Pierce can't fight a boy like Gideon head-on, so he went after his flank. He intentionally set out to ruin Gideon out of pure, bitter envy." Katie absorbed the information, her jaw tightening as the protective instinct of a mother flared hot in her chest. But then she looked back at Gable. Her eyes softened as she took in the weary, honest lines of his face, seeing the fierce, unwavering loyalty he already carried for her son. The silence of the open field stretched out, comfortable, cautious, and incredibly warm. Standing there at the edge of the wild pines, two people who had spent decades convinced their best days were behind them suddenly found themselves wondering if, perhaps, there was still a little bit of fire left in the ashes. The barn and the brotherhood. While the older generation found a quiet moment near the tree line, Gideon and Colt, Zoo, McCoo walked in the opposite direction, pushing open the heavy wooden doors of the main barn. Inside, the air was thick and warm, heated by the bodies of a dozen black and white Holsteins lined up at the feeding trough. The pungent, earthy odor of manure and damp hay hung heavy in the rafters. Zoo breathed in through his nose, his face scrunching up in a comical grimace. He looked over at Gideon. "You know, it's pungent," Zoo remarked, waving a thick hand in front of his face, "but it still smells better than Baxter Pierce's cologne." Gideon offered a weak, tired smile, grabbing a pitchfork to shift some hay, but Zoo didn't move to help. The wrestling captain stood in the center of the barn aisle, his usually boisterous demeanor suddenly turning deadly serious. "Have to tell you something, Rivers," Zoo said, his gravelly voice dropping an octave. "I was there. In the coffee shop the day Pierce made his move on Maya. I was 2 booths away. I watched him methodically break her down." Gideon stopped moving. The pitchfork rested against the wooden stall. He didn't speak, but his massive shoulders tensed. "And the night we were in the alleyway," Zoo continued, taking a step closer, needing his new teammate to understand. "The reason I was going to cave his face in wasn't just because he bumped into me. It was because that prick was in the pub, shooting his mouth off to anyone who would listen. He was laughing, Gideon." He raised a glass and said, "So, what's a king without a crown?" Zoo swallowed hard, the tough exterior of the wrestler giving way to deep, brotherly empathy. "I heard you last night in the milk house, Gideon. I heard you sobbing in your sleep. I know you're carrying the weight of the world right now." Zoo had recognized the sheer magnitude of the heartbreak, the ontological shock and the existential crisis that was tearing the giant apart from the inside out. Gideon looked at Zoo. The stoic walls he had built for Thorne's classroom completely dissolved. He looked at the wrestling captain with deep admiration, profoundly moved that this man, who barely knew him a week ago, was willing to carry his pain. Gideon hung his head. In the dim, dusty light of the barn, tears finally slipped free, falling like tiny droplets of salty rain from his dark eyes. "Philosopher King," Gideon whispered, the title now sounding like a bitter curse on his tongue. His voice broke, thick with the agony of regret. "I couldn't even see that the love of my life needed me to just be more human, and be there for her." For a moment, the heavy grief hung in the air, absolute and unbroken. Then, the loud, resonant mooing of a Holstein echoed through the wooden rafters, completely drowning out the heavy silence. Right on cue, a small, furry blur darted through the barn doors. It was Sammy from Miami, bounding down the center aisle, his tail wagging furiously without a single care in the world. He stopped at Zoo's boots, sniffing the ground enthusiastically. The heavy tension snapped. Zoo looked down at the scruffy terrier and let out a loud, sudden chuckle. "Sammy, you poser," Zoo laughed, shaking his head. "You don't want to hang with us. You're just trying to see if Coach was in here so you could scarf up some more bacon." Zoo bent down and scratched the dog behind his ears. "You're a criminal dog, indeed." Gideon wiped his eyes with the back of his calloused hand, a genuine, albeit watery, smile breaking through the sorrow. In the middle of the barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and the unrefined reality of the world, the philosopher King realized he wasn't completely alone anymore. "And these my mariners, who have heard the choir of the greater sea, have heard me as well."
I told the doctor I broke my leg in 2 places. A man stepped into an elevator and said to a woman, "Can I smell your perfume?" She said no, so he said, "Okay, that must be your feet then." My girlfriend said I put the pro back in procrastination, so I put the friend back in girlfriend. The population of my small town never increases. Every time a baby is born, a guy leaves town. A woman inflicted with flatulence quickly got up to play the piano, a song called The Storm. Her boyfriend said, "Don't let the lightning strike the outhouse again." Sorry I was late to the studio. I was in the restroom and the sign said employees must wash hands, so I waited for the next shift to arrive. My doctor gave me a suppository. I took it. I have to be honest. We were all really busy. I made sure I shoved it up my ass. And then there's my daughter. Someone put shade in her hard times. Feeling like I ate too much fiber. flatulence, quickly got up to play the piano. A song called The Storm. Her boyfriend said, don't let the lightning strike me out.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range, cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything you need. Your mind's got the key ingredient, it's belief. They deceive with the negativity, but I just slide right by that energy.